I'm sure you've all seen the increasing use of AI. It's everywhere you go, from images to videos. It's getting really hard to avoid, and that includes in writing. With NaNoWriMo calling criticising the use of AI in writing classist and ableists, more and more writers are using AI in their work. Whether it's being used significantly to write the whole novel or used in a small capacity to generate prompts or write individual lines, AI is still being used in writing. Now, in general, it does seem a lot of people are for AI, they enjoy using it, they like using it, they advocate for using it. There are many people, including myself, who are against it, especially in the writing community. And especially when you leave the prompts from an AI in a published novel. Hey everyone, it's Dr. Hayes, and in today's video we're going to be discussing two authors who self-published their books by the looks of things, but they were written with the use of AI. But then, I'm assuming, on accident, they left said AI prompts in the book, which is how everyone knows they were written with AI. Now, usually I see these sorts of situations on TikTok. Not this time, although I know it has been discussed on TikTok. I've seen videos since about the situation, but I actually found out about this issue from my mum. So I'll just be sat in bed at night, and usually at night is when my mum reads the news on her iPad, and if she reads a news article that she thinks might interest me or one of my brothers, since we're usually on our devices at the time, she'll just airdrop it to whichever one of us she thinks it interests the most. So I was laid in bed the other night, I was watching Solo Leveling, this really good anime, and I just suddenly interrupted with the airdrop of this article. So full credit for this video idea to my mum. Thank you, mum. So I will leave this article linked in the description box, but we're going to read some of it together. So fantasy and romance writers address AI controversies after readers discover prompts in published books. Is it an author's duty to disclose the use of AI tools for brainstorming, editing or drafting? Writers and readers are still figuring out the rules. Two romantasy authors have publicly defended their use of AI intelligence after being caught with AI-generated prompts left in their published works. While their readers are far from impressed, the writers insist that it does not take away from their craft. Excerpts from novels published by Crowne and Lena McDonald have been spreading across Reddit, Goodreads and Blue Sky after readers discovered revision notes that read like ChatGPT and cues that reference the style of authors embedded in the copy. So that's the basic situation, but now I'm going to read the actual excerpt. This one is from Lena McDonald's book, where she left the AI section in. So I've rewritten the passage to align more with J. Bree's style, which features more tension, gritty undertones, and raw emotional subtext beneath the supernatural elements. So according to Google, J. Bree writes mainly dark contemporary romance, paranormal romance, and fantasy. And while I do think it's very sweet that this author was like, I like the style of this author so much that I want to emulate them in my book, you can also emulate other writers' style without AI. For example, I used to write as a copywriter, and a huge part of not just my job as a copywriter, but in general when you're a copywriter, is to emulate the tone of voice of whatever brand, whatever company, whatever person you are working for. So some companies might describe their tone as quite formal and professional, a lot of fact-based statistics, other will be more kind of friendly, more informal, some of them might be a little bit funny. It really depends. So what I would do whenever I got a new client is I would read other bits of copy that they already had on their website, for example, like in their about section or like their services or whatever. I'd write down keywords or vocabulary, look at the sentence length. Some people write with a lot of short sentences, some people a lot of long sentences. It's a real mixture, but basically I would do all of those things so when it came down to writing whatever it was they'd asked for, I could try and emulate their style. And at no point ever was I allowed to use AI. The only thing I could use that was as close to AI was just Grammarly's spell and grammar check. That was it. So regarding this issue, the author Lena McDonald did make a statement. The truth is, I use AI to help edit and shape parts of the book. As a full-time teacher and mum, I simply can't afford a professional editor, and I turn to AI as a tool to help refine my writing. My goal was always to entertain, not to mislead. I do sympathise with her, as she's quite clearly busy, definitely busier than I am, and I know some other writers would be, but as an author I don't think this means that you should use AI. I don't think it's like a valid excuse, basically. I do acknowledge that the use of AI speeds up whatever you're using the AI for, and in this case, if you're using it to write something versus doing the writing yourself, the AI is going to be able to do it far quicker than you ever would be able to. I acknowledge that. but I personally would spend longer time on something, and others also spend longer time on something, so AI is not used. And then we have a second situation with the author Casey Crowne. McDonald is not the only author who's been caught using AI prompts in recent months. A top-ranked author on Amazon who writes under the name Casey Crowne published a book called Dark Obsession in January, one of many dozens of titles under the author's byline. However, it wasn't long before screenshots from the mafia romance novel began spreading with what appeared to be an AI prompt in the middle of the page. I love mafia romances. Don't do this then, don't ruin them for me. Okay, I love those kinds of books. So this next section is the AI prompt that was left in. Here's an enhanced version of your passage, making Elena more relatable and injecting additional humour while providing a brief, sexy description of Grigori? Is this like a fun fantasy spelling of the name Gregory? I don't know. Fantasy names always trip me up. I'll say them one way, then I'll see a video of someone talking about the same book and they say it in a completely different way, and I'm like, how do you say this name? I don't know. So Casey Crowne did address this. Crowne has seemingly responded to the accusations via her personal assistant's Facebook account. I recently started the practice of using AI to make very minor edits. I am not gonna lie, a little bit confused why she's using her personal assistant's Facebook. Obviously it seems she doesn't have one if she felt the need to have to use her personal assistants, but I'm also like, she's a self-published indie author, and most self-published indie authors have to do all the marketing themselves, which like 95% of the time does seem to be done through social media. So does she not have her own, if not Facebook and Instagram or TikTok, any other kind of platform, even Goodreads? What about you, Goodreads? Can you make statements on Goodreads? I don't even know. Okay. Crowne also wrote in an email to Futurism, earlier this year I made an honest mistake. I accidentally uploaded the wrong draft file, which included an AI prompt. The error was entirely my responsibility, and that's why I made the tough decision to address it publicly. She explained that occasionally she uses AI to brainstorm or to tackle writer's block, but that every story I publish is fundamentally my own. She also added, I only use AI-assisted tools in ways that help me improve my craft, while fully complying with the terms of service of publishing platforms to the best of my ability. Again, like with the last author, I really don't buy this reasoning for it. I feel like the use of AI in any capacity, especially these ones, is just an absolute waste of resources as well as your own time and effort, as well as this is like also something you can use real people for free for this. I see all the time on my For You page, all the people I follow from people I don't follow on TikTok who are indie authors, indie writers, looking for people to read a first draft of a couple of chapters for their book. There is no expectation of payment. I've done it a couple of times myself. I've really enjoyed it every single time I do it. So usually what happens is they send you, so usually I only ever read the first chapter. Those are the ones I typically sign up for because I don't have a ton of time. But they send the first chapter over, they often send sometimes a list of questions like, what did you think of this specifically, what do you think of that specifically? Read it all, answer the questions, send it back. They find it really useful. There is never pretty much an expectation of payment from the people who do this. I know when I'm sitting down to do this, I'm doing it for free. That's totally fine with me. But just ask people to read stuff. Like if you want this section to be more gritty, get some advice from people. There are loads of people willing to do this for free on the internet if you ask. Personally, my bottom line is if someone writes something with AI, including a book, even if it's only used once, I do not want to read it. Done. And just in general, if someone is like, oh, I use AI to do this thing, whatever it is, writing it otherwise, I'm immediately like, no. No. As soon as I find out, because honestly AI is getting pretty good, I can't always tell from looking at like an image or something. If I find out someone's used AI, I'm just like, no. No. The reason I'm so personally against the use of AI in writing is because to me it just lacks soul. And I know again people will say, oh, it's getting better every day as it learns, but to me it will never feel like a human wrote it. So for example, this is a theme in pretty much everything I write, and I didn't realise until one of my PhD supervisors told me about when I was still doing it. So part of my PhD was to write a novel. It was a creative writing PhD, and one of my supervisors asked, was like, well, maybe we should like put the dad in here, and I was like, no, I don't really want to do that. And then we were, another supervision a couple of weeks later, we were discussing about the dads in my work, and I was just like, you know, they're just there, they don't really serve much of a function. And then a few weeks after that, I had written an essay. My PhD was quite personal, it was quite reflective more than critical, which was fine for the remit of my PhD. And I talked about my parents getting divorced and how my dad basically hasn't been around since I was like, I think about 13 years old. And my supervisor was like, oh, that actually explains a lot. And I was like, what do you mean? And she just pointed out that, and she was completely right, if a character has a dad in my book, they're usually not very nice, very absent, or they don't really serve much of a function, they're just there as like a societal norm. But like 90% of the time, a lot of my characters just don't have a dad, and it's not brought up as like a big part of like the character's life, it's just they don't know who their dad is. And they just move on with it because of the way I grew up. It's just like, oh yeah, my dad's not here. Anyway, an AI would never be able to replicate that because they don't have human experiences to draw on. If you're a writer yourself, you will notice in your own works that there are references to things that have happened in your life that AI, or just actually another person, wouldn't be able to replicate because they haven't been through the things you've been through. And an AI has none of that, because it doesn't have that. Writing novels and poetry and short stories and video games and screenplays and radio plays and fan fiction is to me something that requires a human to do it. To me, the creative process is fundamentally human. And if you try and use AI for it, it can do it, but it's gonna always fall short. And at that point, if you're considering using AI for even a small thing in your writing, I don't even think you should bother trying, because to me that's not even real writing. Another reason I am against it is because it steals people's work. As I said before, it's machine learning. AI has to learn by reading other things to get better and stuff, thereby in this case using other people's writing for that without the permission of the writer, which is absolutely awful. And we do also have to discuss the environmental impact of AI. If you didn't already know, the computers that generate all the AI answers heat up very, very quickly because the amount of people using it and the amount of power it takes to do that, so they need a lot of water to cool it down. And this article from MIT, which I will link down below, discusses the environmental impact of AI. Furthermore, deploying these models in real-world applications, enabling millions to use generative AI in their daily lives, and then fine-tuning the models to improve their performance draws large amounts of energy long after a model has been developed. Beyond electricity demands, a great deal of water is needed to cool the hardware used for training, deploying, and fine-tuning AI models, which can strain municipal water supplies and disrupt local ecosystems. Considering that is one of the costs of AI, I just do not think it is worth it. Now, it is currently being discussed if this water, instead of fresh water, which is what's currently being used, it can be treated wastewater instead. However, water can be recycled only so many times. One of my best friends, I love her dearly, she loves using AI, and I keep telling her like about the environmental impact, and she's always like, well, it can just be reused, that's the great thing about water. Not in this case, actually, it can't. Not always. Water cannot be reused forever. There will eventually be a loss. Now, that original article also includes statements from publishing houses around their stances on AI. When it comes to the major players in publishing, their position on AI is tentative. Penguin Random House's AI approach champions human creativity and advocates for intellectual property, but as we will use generative AI tools selectively and responsibly, where we see a clear case that can advance our goals. Meanwhile, Hatchet UK opposes machine creativity, but encourages responsible experimentation with AI for operational users, and recognises the benefits of remaining curious and embracing technology. However, despite all of that, again, like I said before, I personally am completely opposed to the use of AI in pretty much any capacity. While I understand it can speed up the writing process, either by a little or by a lot, depending on what capacity you use it for exactly in a novel, I just don't think there's a way you can ethically use it, considering that, first of all, in order for the AI to learn and write something good for you, it has to steal writing of other people to do it, and also due to the environmental impact of it. I just don't think there's an ethical way to use AI. And I just wanted to come back to something I mentioned at the start of the video about NaNoWriMo, saying the use of AI is classist and ableist. As someone who is first of all disabled, and second of all, I would now class myself as like lower middle class, but as someone who grew up working class, like otherwise known as lower class in the UK, it absolutely is not classist and ableist. And it's absolutely disgusting of them to describe it as such. But anyway, that's my thoughts, my opinions on this, basically against AI in any capacity for everything, especially writing. But I would love to know what you think. I don't think this will be the last time this happens though. Definitely not. It's gonna happen again, I know, unfortunately, but I'm not really sure what there really is we can do about it, which I think is the sad thing. But anyway, I'd love to know what you think of this, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!